You guys had questions? I got answers. What are some of the best baits under 50 bucks or thereabouts for Shield Lakes up where I live? What are some of the baits that are commonly overlooked when guys come up here and fish Shield Lakes? What are some of the baits that we used in the past that we kind of drifted away from? Those are some of the questions we're going to answer today. I got a list from some of our followers here, and I even got one coming from our Instagram followers, so stick around. Let's get started. Our first question comes from our good buddy Pat. He's ILL Musky Hunter on YouTube, and he actually had a really good bunch of questions. But one of his first ones were, what were some of the best baits under $50? And because I'm up in Canada, the prices are going to vary a lot from, the States or overseas, wherever you guys are watching. But if you're coming up to Canada and you're looking for some affordable baits that are going to kind of fit the bill and are essential baits for Canada, one that you have to have is just a Suick Thriller. This is one of the new high impact with the weight kit that you get. We actually got this one from Mike and Steve Suick at the Minnesota show. We're really looking forward to getting this one in the water, doing a little comparison on how it reacts with different weights. But Suicks are inexpensive, and it's a staple bait for Canada and for Shield Lakes, so you definitely have to have a Suick. Comes in well under 50 bucks anywhere. Another one that anybody that follows their channel knows, the Bondy Royal Orba. These things are inexpensive. They catch a ton of fish for us. There's a few mods that we like to do. We like to put 3/0 round gap hooks, just a little bit better hook on there, and it keeps them from hooking up on the rubber. Some of them we put weedless hooks like we had in past videos, and I sometimes like to put a magnet at the front to keep that front hook from fouling. But if you're coming to Canada and you don't have a Bondy Royal Orba, you are sleeping on one of the best baits for Shield Lakes. Another one that you gotta have if you're coming up to the Shield Lakes, if you're gonna bring one crankbait for trolling, just grab a 13-inch granny. They're so inexpensive. I'm not sure what a 13-inch goes for, 50 bucks, give or take. And they work everywhere. We love Tennessee shad. If you're going to pick one, pick a Tennessee shad 13-inch granny. Again, you guys watch the channel. You got to have a spinner bait up in Canada. And one of our favorite is the Drop Tine Growler. This just happens to be in our signature color pattern, which we appreciate from the fine folks over at Tine Tackle. But get yourself a spinner bait, whether it's one like this or if it's one of the new weed whacker ones that we just got from Blue Water Baits. There's a whole bunch on the market. If you're looking for an inexpensive one, just go to the Booker, Slop Master. My wife pretty much made a career out of musky fishing those things early on. You can't go wrong with a cheap, small spinner bait. And if you guys are going to look for a bucktail, there's a bazillion bucktails out there. Everyone knows we love the Dadsons. Super hard to get. My wife's shop is going to have some 10 millimeters this summer, I believe. They're going to come in under 50 bucks. There's a lot of stuff. Just go out, get a Cowgirl from Musky Mayhem, and you absolutely can't go wrong. Try a Trigger from Musky Mayhem. They're going to work up here in Canada, and again, they're relatively inexpensive. If you can get your hands on a Dadson, that's what we recommend. Pat also asked, what are some of the baits that we used to use that we've just, for whatever reason, kind of drifted away from? And for me, anybody that knows me and has fished with me over the past 10 years, know it has to be the Booker Dancing Raider. When they discontinued these, I scoured the internet and I bought almost every one I could find because they were just such a great bait. Here's a custom painted one I had done. I've already retired one in this kind of shad color. Caught a ton of great fish. This bait held my personal best for quite a few years. When I put this bait on, everyone else in the boat was like, oh, that damn bait again. They could hear it clicking and splashing through the water. And it kind of ties into one of the baits that David and Kyla used to use a lot was the Fat Bastard from Lake X Lures. Dave would use a pacemaker as well. But for whatever reason, we've drifted away from top water in general. And I think the summer of 2018, we just had a really weird year and we just had no top water bite. And since then, we've drifted away from finesse fishing, which is what I would call top water, especially walk the dog stuff, more of a finesse presentation, and we try to power fish our through spots now. But after last year having some success with the Big Al from TR Custom Lures and getting some bites on some of these other walk the dog baits and flaptails, creepers, etc., we're going to get back to some of these top water baits because these things are absolute classics, and I'm not sure why we're sleeping on them that way. And I'm almost ashamed to say this now that we're kind of part of that chaos family of tackle. But one that we used to use a lot, and my wife especially, was the Mid-Medusa. You hear my buddy Matt Vavrock talk about the Mid-Medusa all the time down in Iowa and the Northwoods of Wisconsin. Again, my wife used to use the Mid-Medusa and catch a ton of fish. I've caught a couple really nice fish, including the one right here on a Mid-Medusa. But for whatever reason, it was just one that we slowly started to drift away from. And now we're kind of getting back into fishing more rubber, and especially the Medusas. And my wall back there is full of regular Medusas, monster Medusas. I like throwing those big baits, but there is a time and a place for a Mid-Medusa. And sadly, we've kind of drifted away from it, but you will see this thing in the future. One of the most common overlooked lures that I see guys that come up to Canada is a spinnerbait. This is a Vigilante from Lebowski Lures. And like I just said, talking about the drop tine growler, if you're coming to Canada, you have to have a spinnerbait in your box because we have a lot of down timber, a lot of weeds. There's spots even in shallow rocks on top of mid-lake reefs that you just cannot get in with any other style of bait save a top water. If you can get in there with a spinnerbait like this, it can just produce on a day where nothing else will. And I don't know why more guys don't throw spinnerbait. So that's definitely one. Another one is just a tube. This is a Red October. This is a shallow with a spinner with a blade on the back. And I'm not a huge tube user. We're getting better at it. It definitely takes a little bit to get used to using these. One of my buddies, Michael Grant, he makes an absolute living out of throwing tubes up here on these deep, clear shield lakes, especially the trout waters. He loves tubes. We fish with them. Just watching somebody that knows how to run these things and produce with them is just, it's awe-inspiring. It's something that we're going to try and do, but it's something that I don't see a lot of guys throw is just a Red October tube. And another bait that's like criminally underrated on the whole is a swimming dog or any of the swim baits, a Poseidon, a Shadzilla. The list goes on and on and on. But I barely see guys ever throwing these big paddle tail swim baits. We like the shallow versions because they'll have a little bit more belly roll. They'll kind of hang in the water a little bit better. We like to use these around weeds and shallow rocks, and they're just, you get bit on these things when other baits won't work. And why guys don't use them, it baffles me when I mention to guys that I take out or guys that I talk to in the sports shop, get a swim bait, and they're like, no, we just don't use them. And it's just criminally underrated. The other one, again, for anybody that watches us, the toad. I don't see hardly anybody using a toad up here in Canada. And if you watch our channel, you know how much success we have on it. Me specifically, it's one of my go-to lures. And nobody up here that comes from the States or anywhere else really uses one. And it baffles me why guys overlook this lure all the time. Anybody who's watched Musky Hunter over the years knows that Jim Sarek killed with these 9-inch shallow raiders up here on Shield Lakes. And it's a lure that it's kind of like the previous category. We used to use it a bunch and we kind of slipped away from it. But there are a time and place where you need a crankbait like this. We used a lot of triple Ds. I've been in the boat with David when he's put 3 fish in the boat from the back of the boat on a triple D bouncing off of rocks. When I'm at the front with a bucktail and I might get 1 fish to follow or 1 bite all day. And if you don't like the bigger profile of a shallow raider, Get a smaller style, a little bit thinner. This one's from Keystone King Musky Lures. This is kind of his twitch bait, crankbait. Same idea, just bang it down in the rocks. And again, back to my buddy Matt Vavrock. This is a 9-inch Ridgeway Custom, and it's got a big heavy bill, can take the abuse of pounding into the rocks. And on days where nothing else will produce, having a crankbait that you can just beat up and not be super worried about breaking or getting snagged up will get you guys a fish when nothing else will work. So I got another question, and I believe it come from Instagram or Facebook. I don't recall which. It actually happened quite a while ago, and it just kind of stuck with me. And it was, if you could pick one lure to fish a weekend, a day, a trip, what would it be? It might seem obvious. There's a few obvious answers for you guys that watch the channel. But it really got me thinking, what is a confidence lure? And it got me thinking, I need to do a video on what is a confidence bait. So I reached out to some of my YouTube buddies. That video is going to drop really, really soon. But until then, check out this video here where we talk about fishing with confidence baits. And until next time, 54 Bust is out of here. We'll catch you guys out on the water. Later.